Jimmy Savile, one of the world's most notorious sex offenders, shielded until after his death. His reckoning may have not occurred during his life, but the revelations from his victims have permanently impacted his reputation. An OBE, a knighthood, a wish giver, a financial powerhouse for charity, all accolades and positions utilised to his advantage to hide him from his true motives. Savile is an uncomfortable figure to discuss, and after much internal conflict, Steve Coogan took on the immense task of playing him in this BBC dramatisation of Savile's rise and fall. The Reckoning is the subject of today's Nightmare Fuel episode, and I will stress that there will be sensitive and controversial themes discussed throughout, as well as spoilers. I'd like to personally ask if you could keep the comments section as respectful as possible given the subject matter, and thank you in advance for your thoughtfulness. This show was never going to be easy to create, let alone discuss, but Coogan's decision to take on the role was swayed by that uncomfortability. In interviews, he has stated that if you ignore these stories and brush them under the carpet, you can't learn anything or evolve. The only way to generate important conversations was to swallow the bitter pill and tackle it head on. And when The Reckoning comes full circle, I think that it's an expertly handled production that verifies its existence. Though there are alterations to the facts, including some name changes and also some scenes added for the purposes of dramatisation, the show openly tells you this. It doesn't try to pull a veil over your eyes. It's based on extensive research, victim accounts and interviews, with a juggernaut of a central performance to bring the Jimmy Savile story to the masses in as accurate a way as possible, through the medium of event television drama. This 4-episode miniseries introduces us to Savile while still making a name for himself in the entertainment world. He is a radio DJ and also a DJ for dance halls which attract the youth. We can tell within the first act of the first episode just how devious a man he is, and not just in a predatory sense. He has a young man beaten up on his premises in a cold behind-the-scenes moment, shrouded in shadow and switching to a stern and unforgiving man behind closed doors. This is a side to Savile that the world rarely saw with clarity, yet it was a side to Savile that he so often defended, hiding behind a variety of shields. The first kind we witness in The Reckoning is his piggybacking of other famous names. He uses his association with Elvis Presley to convince two young girls to come back to his place, where he and his so-called adopted son Ray Terrett take advantage of them sexually. It's a horrific scene where the audience are thankfully spared any harsh visuals, yet the disturbing mental image still lingers. That's one thing I think that this show handled well in a frightening sense. You don't need to be shown everything, you just need to see enough for the impression to be felt, and your mind fills in the blanks. That's a terrible place to find one's mentality as an audience member, for the disturbance you feel to be brought about by triggers rather than full reenactments, and you know fine well what's happening. And speaking of reenactments, I do appreciate the creative choice to cut back and forth to real footage and images of history rather than trying to recreate these moments with Coogan in their place. Coogan is more of a vessel here, an actor who channels Savile in scenes where there isn't any footage, but where there is example footage that can be used. For the most part, it is used. It keeps the line between dramatisation and reality even closer, which not only do I feel respects the cold hard truth, but it also draws you in towards it further. I think this makes The Reckoning a much tougher watch in the sense of its rawness and authenticity. We see the real deal, we listen to the real victims telling their stories. It makes the whole affair easier to connect to, and that's bloody haunting. However, not a connection as haunting as Savile's connections. His links with powerful people are what aided in his security over the years, and The Reckoning continues to display these. He has a quirky charisma to him as a person, which is what helped divert attention away. Savile's mantra is to just have a bit of fun, something which he always falls back on when he's caught out for going too far with women and young girls alike. Yet it was that bit of fun mentality that won people over. He became well acquainted with Margaret Thatcher, with the BBC controllers, with the police, with mayors and hospitals and fellow celebrities. Savile had a network of people who liked and trusted him, who when any mention of suspicions arose, it got put down to simply Jimmy being Jimmy. Yet Jimmy being Jimmy was an unrestrained menace, and neither The Reckoning nor Coogan shy away from this fact. He's forceful, pushy, seedy. His approach when the cloud of perverse lust rushes through him is to forget his surroundings. Behind unlocked doors, in broad daylight, in front of witnesses, even in full hospital wards. Savile has no filter or shame here. He feels so confident in his ability to bypass the reality of his motives that he goes for it anywhere he can. He touches up young girls on TV sets in front of camera crews and audiences, yet it's glazed over when it's brought up because he was a master manipulator and wordsmith. Savile's main tactic was that he was just a bit strange, and that's it. He fully admits to his tastes for young women, though of legal age, and this leans him into partially revealing some of the truth in order to prevent further digging. The digging in The Reckoning is mostly done by a writer named Dan Davies, who interviews Savile shortly before his death, trying to prod him with a stick and goad the truth out of him. Yet Savile is so stubborn in his ways that his truth was never revealed by himself directly, even when given the opportunity to reveal all before God. This is another one of Savile's shields. Catholicism. He would constantly lean on being a good practicing Catholic. He was involved in the church and even associated with the Pope. It was a perceived morality that he hid behind. How could I be guilty of sins? I'm a good Catholic. He was in fact a liar, using religion as a cover for being faithful and a trustworthy man, where if ever his sins were brought up, it was a matter for him and God, nobody else. It's almost like, in a way, Savile felt godlike. He loved his status, his wealth, his notoriety, and the admiration felt towards him. And the fact he kept on going without being caught gave him an invincibility complex, inspiring a confidence in him to continue his activities without fear or remorse when the worst happens. The worst, of course, being presented in The Reckoning with the suicide of Cla Mcalpine, here demonstrated through the suicide of Sarah. There has been some feedback about the name change here, though again the show openly states that some names have been altered. Sarah, or Claire, was a top of the Pops audience member who Savile groomed and took advantage of, and later killed herself via an overdose at the age of 15. Yet when Savile is questioned about this and presented with photographic evidence of him touching her inappropriately on set, he still worms his way out of it with his words and demeanour. Savile's character is what made him untouchable. He flourished with his dirty deeds in a time where the voice of women was suppressed, where his celebrity was so vast that it inspired fear in his victims from wanting to speak up. Make sure they keep stum is what he says to Ray Terrett with regards to what to do with his victims. Silence them. And that's what Savile succeeded at. Children going to the authorities with stories? They do these kinds of things all the time to take advantage of my celebrity. Have you done these terrible things? Absolutely not, I swear on my mother's grave. He creates these oaths and uses phrases that are reminiscent of honesty. You'd swear on your mother's grave because normally that's something you wouldn't want to tarnish with lies. Though here, Savile's relationship with his mother is a bizarre one and another element to his character. He refers to his mother as the Duchess, and she's played wonderfully here by Gemma Jones. It's a Norman Bates style fascination that Savile has with her. He idolises her, treats her like royalty. Even after her death, he wears his father's wedding ring, almost like he sees himself as a husband to her. He takes care of her, but in confession, even she admits to disliking her son. Even she thinks that there is something wrong with Jimmy, that he's not all what it seems. If even she, his mother, suspects issues and it goes by unspoken, then what chance does the rest of the world have? We also see a depiction in The Reckoning of the supposed 5-day period Savile sat next to his mother's corpse, and in a later scene he molests a woman's dead body in hospital. This opens up a necrophiliac dimension to Savile, a fascination for the dead and an attraction to them, perhaps feeding into his invincibility complex even more as the dead cannot speak up for themselves. It's truly sickening to contemplate just how more bad things Savile could have been capable of. We may have not experienced the worst of his deepest desires, only a surface level in his own personal considerations. The warning signs were always there, but luck was on Savile's side, as all of his footprints in the sand got brushed over. He constructed barriers all around him from all angles that either made people turn the other cheek or become muzzled. What is extremely disturbing is in later episodes, where we see Savile wearing a shirt saying, "I am an animal and I will eat you if I have to." This horrendously telling shirt is almost like he wanted to be close to exposure, like he got excited by the dangers of having the light of discovery shone on him, or perhaps it was just another twisted game to him for his own sick amusement. Savile is genuinely uncaring about those he affected. He openly states that if he had his time again, he'd do nothing differently, and that he is indestructible. He would do it all once more, every single victim, every single scar, every single time, because it made him feel powerful. The gold, the cigars, his name being recognised, his face being recognised, it all empowered Savile, and it all linked back to his deepest sexual urges, which he stopped at nothing to satisfy. When faced with threats, he stood his ground and worked his oddball magic, even in the interview shown in episode 4, which is particularly frightening. Faced by 2 female officers, Savile effectively states that ludicrous allegations made about him, which quite clearly do hold weight, are passed on to his friends in the police to deal with. Then any more serious matters are dealt with by his legal team and his extensive knowledge of law, having a doctorate in that field. Basically, if you tried to speak up against Savile's actions, you'd either be taken as a joke by his friends in power, or your voice would be hushed by his own power. Savile knew the law. He knew that without concrete evidence, nothing could be done, and so he knew how to alter the world around him so that concrete was never a possible building material for allegations. And still, there was always luck riding on Savile's side. In a chilling final line, Savile refuses to confess his sins, because he wants to take his chances, like he always has. Effectively, all of his wrongdoings he's put down to chance. Every time he's kissed a girl's arm hoping for more, every time he's backed women into corners, every time he's invited little girls and boys to private rooms with him, there was always the risk of being found out. But to Savile, the risk was always worth it. The chance of a bit of pleasure was worth the chance of being foiled. He had nothing to lose and zero intentions of losing even that. The Reckoning is a powerful drama which I think is of a high level of importance. Savile is not the only person in the world like this, though he has become a figurehead for this kind of activity. Making shows like this, tackling issues like this, actually presenting these themes to a wider audience to introduce discussions into the mainstream is immensely important. These things shouldn't happen again, and The Reckoning is a terrifying depiction of all the reasons why they shouldn't. That is why I wanted to discuss it here as part of our Nightmare Fuel series. I also wanted to do it to hopefully create some good out of it by making this video a fundraiser for victims of themes depicted in The Reckoning and discussed in this video. I thank you for watching. I'm Connor from Unleash the Ghouls. Stay safe, and if you need to, make your voice heard. Help is out there. Always. Cheers.